I'll be presenting on improving social and economic resilience through enhanced regional trade in fish and seafood. And Mr. Haughton is the lead author, and I'm presenting. So we'll talk a little bit about fisheries production and trade, the current status and trends in fish production, export, import, and annual per capita consumption, legal and policy frameworks for regulation in intra-regional trade, impediments to the expansion of intra-regional trade, and recommendations for improvement. So of course, this is our Caribbean here, and this CRFM has 17 member states. And so that is usually the focus when we're looking at the whole landscape. Unfortunately, we don't always get all the data that we need for each member state, but of course, we update as the data becomes available. So fish and fish products are among the most highly traded international foodstuffs. And in addition to that, fisheries and aquaculture support economic and social development, food and nutrition security, employment generation, foreign currency earnings, and stability of coastal communities. So first, we like to look at the big picture, where we fit into the global scheme of things. And so it's good to have an appreciation, not just for our Caribbean context, but what's happening internationally. And so we looked at the state of world fisheries and aquaculture, the 2022 edition, and we just pulled some highlights from that document, which indicates that during 2018 to 2020, an average of 61 metric tons, or roughly 38% of global fisheries production, was traded. And value there for 2020 was US 150.5 billion. And so we are among the 225 states and territories that reported trading activities in fisheries and aquaculture during that period. So again, here we saw where the estimates and the forecasts are looking at increasing trade, the value of world trade, and also the volume, right? And unlike in the Caribbean, when we look at the global picture, aquaculture has actually been increasing its share and is roughly 50% relative to capture fisheries at the global level. So back home, of course, we look not just at what's happening at the fish markets, not just what's happening at the supermarkets, but now there is a very vibrant conversation about how Caribbean countries can enhance trade. We recently saw where one of our sister Caribbean countries was appealing for other Caribbean countries to buy more fish. There was really a plunge in prices, and fishers, traders were hurting and appealing there for us to enhance that intra-regional trade. Another thing here is consumption. And there have been some studies, and we will do our best to update this information as much as possible in time for the scientific publication. But the CRFM has done some work in partnership with JICA to look at per capita consumption. We're talking about intra-regional trade and the justifications for intra-regional trade. And there are many, and I can't really go through them all, otherwise I'll exceed my 7 minutes. But really and truly, we're looking at the context of our countries really as net food importers, and what can we do, especially in the post-COVID recovery period, and looking at a lot of the unfairness that happens on the international markets, a lot of the inequities that we see happening, but also the opportunities, because there are opportunities that Caribbean countries individually and collectively can tap into. And so the CRFM is actually engaging with producers in the region. Now, trade balances for most of our member states are really negative, right? We have some countries where the trade balances are positive, but for the most part, this is the picture that we see and that we've been seeing. Now, we have some countries that are big importers, and we have some countries that are big exporters. And so this is just a ranking here based on the 2022 data that was shared by Dr. Parida. And of course, he is now our in-house expert along with Mrs. June Masters, working on the statistics and working very hard on updating those. So the CRFM produces statistics and information report. It's an annual report. And of course, we rely very much on member states to be very proactive in gathering the information and sharing the information so that these reports can be as accurate as possible. So here we look at marine capture fisheries over time. This helps us to understand the trends, what's happening at the regional level, but also this data can be disaggregated at the national level and sub-regional levels, right? We see here an interesting picture with aquaculture, where of course there's great room for improvement. And there's a story about the high seas fishery. That's a story for another day. But essentially, Belize currently is the main member state that is flagging vessels that operate on the high seas. We had St. Kitts, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the production here is really the production coming out of Belize in the recent years. So another important thing for us to look at is the intra-regional framework for trade in fish. We recently had the conclusion of the WTO fisheries subsidies negotiations. We have other trade agreements, the CARICOM single market and economy. And then there are those impediments to intra-regional trade. And they include non-tariff barriers, SPS requirements, fisheries management capacity, IUU fishing, market intelligence and information systems, international competitiveness, and of course, subsidies. So in conclusion, there's a need for us to look at some proactive measures. And we talk about countries giving higher priority to intra-regional trade, having investments in promoting the expansion of intra-regional trade, and determining the appropriate policy, legal, and institutional reforms and interventions, including capacity building, addressing major constraints and impediments. And definitely what the CRFM has been doing, not just on its own, but in partnership with you, or member states, or regional and international partners, is really leading us in the right direction. And with that, I thank you.